BYU football training camp begins tomorrow. There obviously are big storylines involving the quarterbacks, the offensive line, and the like. I've got 6 names of guys who are under the radar who will have critical roles in BYU's success or failure this fall.
You are Locked On Cougars, your daily podcast on the BYU Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? I'm Jake Hatch, your host here on Locked On Cougars, your resident BYU insider. Thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first view and or listen of the day, and appreciate all of you who we like to call everydayers right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. This is your original daily podcast focused on the BYU Cougars, and today's show is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Make every moment more, and of course, all summer long, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or bonus daily. That's right, there's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com to get started today. All right, there's going to be a lot of storylines over the next month and change as BYU kicks off football training camp tomorrow in Provo about guys like Jake Retzloff, Gary Bohannon, the offensive line led by guys like Connor Pay and Braden Kime, the defensive line led by Tyler Batty, defensive secondary headlined by a guy like Jacob Robinson. Those are not the guys I'm talking about on today's podcast. I have got 6 names that I believe will be under the radar names that you as a Cougar fan, everydayers who like to check out this podcast, will need to know that will have critical roles in any success or failure the BYU will have this fall. So let's dive right in. Let's start off on the defensive side of the football. Let's start off with a true freshman. Yeah, that's a big, bold statement there. But let's talk about Ephraim Asiata. As his family calls him, Fat Boy is critical to any and all success I believe BYU has in terms of getting a better pass rush this fall. When he showed up at BYU for spring camp, multiple practice insiders, people connected with the program, told me he was as violent a player as they have seen in many, many years. He brings a bite, a nastiness, an edge of violence to the game of football that not a lot of guys his age bring to the game, and that is going to be critical for BYU. Remember, this is a kid who has battled back from the brink of death. There were many people who told his family to prepare for the worst after he was involved in that shooting after a fight in high school. He has battled back from that, and he plays the game with zero fear. He is going to be critical to BYU's success on defense. And I know that he's undersized. He lists him generously, I think, at 210 pounds right now as a defensive end for the BYU football program. He will bring an edge off of the edge for BYU's defense that is much needed. You need Tyler Batty to show up, obviously, but I think that Ephraim Asiata, his ability to get after the quarterback and just bring that bite to BYU's defense, they need him to show up this fall. Next up, Hinckley Ropati on the offensive side of the football as a running back. He is obviously a change of pace back. He's a muscle-bound freak of nature who suffered a knee injury last year that precluded him from participating in what was expected to be his final season as a Cougar. He is back and better than ever, according to reports, and the hope is if LJ Martin is injured or if he is unable to go at any point this season, that Hinckley Ropati will kind of pick up that baton and carry it forward for the BYU football program. Folau, as many of his teammates and coaches will call him, is a really, really talented player. He's got a lot of experience under his belt, and should anybody in that offensive backfield falter at all, I think that you'll see Hinckley step up and be a critical piece. And I believe that, yeah, if LJ Martin has any type of nagging concern about him, LJ will give way to Hinckley, and I wouldn't be surprised to see Ropati tote the rock in large doses early on this fall. We'll stay on the offensive side of the football for our next player, Mata'ava Ta'ase. Now, at tight end, I am guilty of this. I have talked a lot about Keanu Hill. I've talked a lot about Reiner Swanson as BYU's potential top 2 options at tight end for BYU this fall. Might I remind you that Mata'ava Ta'ase came to BYU as a preferred walk-on transfer from Southern Utah University, where he was a star in Cedar City, and went from 8th string to 2nd string in just a few weeks' time at BYU. Why are we not talking more about what Tava can offer to BYU's offense? Because I know that Keanu Hill is bulked up and his wide receiver skills are going to be much needed, obviously, in this offense. I know that Reiner Swanson has showed up and has looked the part of a veteran player despite being 17 years old. But do not discount what Mata'ava Ta'ase can offer to this BYU offense. If he can go from 8th to 2nd string in a few weeks' time after showing up BYU last summer, I should say, I believe that he is a name that needs to be paid more attention to going into training camp this summer. Next up, on the defensive side of the football at linebacker, Isaiah Glasker. Glasker was receiving rave reviews throughout training camp last year and then suffered an injury that knocked him out for the entire season. He talked in spring ball how he was chomping at the bit to get back after it, and he showed a lot of what he had showed during fall camp last year in spring camp. If he is capable of showing that once again this fall and staying healthy, maybe, just maybe, if Ben Bywater's not able to get back on the field in a timely fashion, maybe Isaiah Glasker is going to be the beneficiary of that, and he emerges as a star force for BYU on that linebacking core. They need guys like Isaiah Glasker who have got experience under their belt to step forward if Ben Bywater is unavailable, and also help guys like Jack Kelly shoulder the load for this BYU defense. Glasker was a guy that coaches on the record were saying, hey, watch out for this guy last fall. And when he got injured, I think it really put a damper on BYU's linebacking depth. If he stays healthy this year, don't be surprised to see if he becomes a household name for the BYU Cougars. Also on defense, Tanner Wall. Tanner Wall is a walk-on transferred over, is more of a transition from wide receiver to safety in the past couple of seasons, and was BYU starting free safety last year before an arm injury necessitated season-ending surgery. He was part of a large contingent of safeties that BYU sorted through last year. He is being overlooked, I think, because there are a number of other guys who are scholarship players. Look at Raider Damuni. Look at Micah Harper. Look at Talon Alfrey. Look at Faletau Satuala, even as a true freshman coming in. By the way, I'll just add this on Satuala. Satuala has the skill set to contribute to BYU should he prove capable in training camp of being able to understand and digest what BYU is doing defensively. I wouldn't surprise me if his talent level necessitates he sees the field this fall. But on the Wall side of things is that Tanner Wall, when healthy, is the true free safety BYU, I think, lacked sorely last season. Remember, the free safety in Jay Hill's defense, they play 15 yards off the ball. They are quite literally the last line of BYU's defense. They like to roll that strong safety, which guys like a Talon Alfrey will play for BYU this fall, up near the line of scrimmage to offer support in the run game, blitz the quarterback, and that type of stuff. Whereas the free safety, they're the center fielder. They've got to be able to kind of range all over the field, and very few guys were able to do that last year like Wall was able to. Now that Wall is fully healthy, do not be surprised if he emerges as a potential starter for BYU, even though he has got a number of other teammates around him who are scholarship players, and he's the walk-on who seems to be getting overlooked in all of this. The final guy I'm going to mention goes to the special teams side of things. I've got a soft spot for special teamers because they don't get a lot of pub when it comes to storylines, but keep an eye on the name of Sam Van Der Haar. He came to BYU as a transfer from Pitt, spent an entire season working through finding where he was going to land after transferring from the Pitt Panthers, lands at BYU. Why would Kelly Poppinga, as BYU special teams coach, go out and bring an Aussie rules football punter to BYU without thinking he was going to utilize him in their special teams alignments and their overall game plan? What Sam offers is a two-footed ability to kick the ball. You can roll him out left. You can roll him out right. He can boot it that way. He's worked very hard based on the film I have seen of him from social media on working on his traditional punt formation. I know that Landon Rico has got the last name. Ryan Rico, obviously, congratulations to him on signing a new free agent deal with the Cincinnati Bengals. But I know that Landon Rico has the last name that many people think he might have the inside edge at the starting punter position. But do not be surprised to see if Sam Van Der Haar takes that job away, because I think his versatility, both in the traditional punt game as well as that kind of sidewinding Aussie rules football style punt, that offers some things for Kelly Poppinga to utilize that Landon Rico cannot bring to the fore, and I believe that Sam Van Der Haar can offer that. So do not be surprised to see him play a role for BYU as well. So those are the names. I guess it's 7 technically because I added Faletau Satuala to the conversation. But Ephraim Asiata, Hinckley Ropati, Mata Avataase, Isaiah Glasker, Tanner Wall, Faletau Satuala, and Sam Van Der Haar are the 7 names I believe will play critical roles for BYU in training camp, even if they may not take the headlines that other players with bigger reps, like a Jake Retzloff, Gary Bohannon, Darius Lassiter on the defensive line, Isaiah Banya. Those guys will take those headlines, but I think these 7 players have a critical role to BYU's success this fall. What do you think about this? That's why I'm trying to pose to you guys. Are there names out there that you would like to emerge? Are there names that I am missing in my evaluation heading into trading camp? Let us know. Drop us a note in the show notes, whether you're watching this on YouTube, or tweet at us / send us a note via social media or email. LockedOnBYU@gmail.com is the email address. Let us know your feedback. If there's a name we missed, there's a player that you think is being overlooked alongside the rest of this crew, let us know, and we'll be sure to note them in a future edition of the podcast and give you guys some pub along the way. All right, coming up here in just a minute, we're going to talk about BYU's wide receiving core. I didn't mention any of the wide receivers in the conversation we just had because I'll just put it this way. BYU's wide receiver core has maybe the best crop of talent on the entire roster of BYU, is allowing them to allow guys like a 4-star talent to redshirt potentially this season. We'll dig more into that momentarily right here on Locked On Cougars. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Of course, all summer long, all of us are big sports fans, but it seems like we get into these dog days of summer. There's not necessarily as many sports to go and have fun with. Well, that's where FanDuel steps up with. You can go open the app and dream up any bet you have when you're in the mood. If you want to take an over-under on the opportunity to bet on BYU over-under at 4.5 wins this football season, you can do that with FanDuel. You think the BYU has got good odds to win the national championship in basketball with Kevin Young? It's 55-1 odds right now from our friends at FanDuel. Get over and take advantage of it today. And all summer long, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a booster bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everybody every day, all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com, start making the most out of your summer. It's all courtesy of FanDuel, who's an official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. If you've not done so already, have you been watching Fox Sports or ESPN and being sick of all the shouting going on as they embrace debate over on those other networks? I haven't turned on the volume and feel like you have to find another way to consume the sports information you want. Make the switch to Locked On Sports today. It's a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every single day to bring in the biggest stories without all the screaming going on the other networks. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. It's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, yesterday on the podcast, we talked about BYU's defensive tackle position having major question marks that I don't think that there is a ready-made answer for them in the near-term future. Well, today I want to flip the script and talk about a position group that I believe has got the goods and will absolutely be a force for BYU to utilize this fall. That is BYU's wide receivers. I don't believe that there is a position group, and I've been saying this for quite some time. For those of you who are everydayers here on the podcast, you heard me talk about this like a broken record, about the fact that BYU's wide receiving core is the deepest and most talented unit on BYU's entire football roster. I believe it absolutely is, because you have your top 6 guys returning from last season, if you include Keanu Hill, who's now a tight end, but all of them should be better prepared and more well-versed in what to expect out of the Big 12 rigors of what the season entails for them. Obviously, there's injury concerns for guys like Chase Roberts, Cody Epps, also Darius Lassiter. They have had to overcome injuries during their previous seasons as college football players. But if they should stay healthy, that trio of Lassiter, Roberts, and Epps, it sounds like a law firm in many respects, should be BYU's top trio in my mind. But they have 3 guys right behind them that are just as good, if not better in certain circumstances, in Keelan Marion, Parker Kingston, and obviously JoJo Phillips, who is starting to emerge and really, I think, could take the next step this fall. That is a top 6 of wide receivers that many programs out there would love to have. Is there a Puka Nacua in that bunch? Is there a Cody Hoffman? Maybe not. Maybe they're not going to have a guy who's going to go for 1,000 yards. But between those 6 players, I could see a very real scenario with each of them going over 500 yards on the season and allowing whoever ends up as quarterback, whether that's Jake Retzloff or Gary Bohannon, to easily have 3,000 yards passing. And that obviously go a long way to helping BYU have success on the gridiron this fall. And I'm just saying that that's a conservative number, 3,000 passing yards, 500 yards between these guys, and a handful of touchdowns amongst the bunch. Be a really cool outcome. The other thing is, though, is that this wide receiving core, its depth and its versatility are going to allow Kalani Sitake as the position group coach and obviously the passing game coordinator for the BYU football program to be able to redshirt guys like a 4-star talent in Cody Hagen and a high 3-star talent in Dominique McKenzie. I'm not saying that BYU is going to make sure that these guys stay off the field, because if they prove they're capable, why wouldn't you throw them on the field? Those two were two of the fastest sprinters in their high school careers in the state of Utah in the recent memory. Cody Hagen is a bona fide star in the making if he lives up to the billing he had coming out of Corner Canyon High School. Dominique McKenzie is the son of former BYU running back standout Brian McKenzie. His brother Marcus is a standout cornerback prospect for BYU on the defensive side of the football. If those two players prove capable, BYU will not hesitate in putting them on the field. But if they should have any of those concerns that a lot of returned missionaries for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints seem to have in returning to play football, you have 6 guys in front of them who are more than capable of shouldering the load, allowing these other 2 high-level prospects to kind of emerge on their own timeline and hopefully become the star players that they want to become in due time, while the other guys kind of overshadow the fact that they have not seen the field maybe early on in their BYU careers. I'm not saying it's a bad thing to have a guy like Cody Hagen waiting in the wings for the BYU football program. Think about that. If he's your 7th best wide receiver this fall, and he's a former 4-star talent that seemingly everybody in the Intermountain West, if not the nation, wanted to sign out of high school, that is an incredible luxury to have for Kalani Sitake and the BYU Cougars. Dominique McKenzie, same deal. He's an absolute burner, a speedster who showed some flashes during spring camp coming off of a mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. He is absolutely going to be in the mix. And oh, by the way, there's another Nakua in the mix. Tate Nakua comes in from BYU as a freshman from Timpview High School. Yes, if you believe the reports, he's a little more raw than his other brothers because he came kind of late to playing the sport of football. But when you have the last name Nakua, I'll just tell you this much. What I know of the Nakua family is that the talent base is there to have him step up and really become a standout player for BYU in time. That's the 9th guy I have mentioned in this wide receiver core. And I haven't even mentioned some of the walk-ons BYU's got to add to the mix here. Also a scholarship player in Jaron Kalama. It is an incredible collection of talent that Fesi Sitake has assembled at BYU. If you're Jake Retzloff, if you're Gary Bohannon, if you're Trayson Bourget, McKay Hillstead, Noah Lugo, Cole Hagen, the other quarterbacks on BYU's roster who may spend time on the scout team, speaking of the kind of the final 3 I'd mentioned there, to have potentially a guy like a Cody Hagen as your star receiver on the scout team, that's going to be really cool and going to make for a really, really interesting practice for BYU's defensive backs to go up against. It is incredible to consider what this wide receiving core could become for BYU. Do I believe that one of them could emerge and become that quote-unquote Puka Nakua, the alpha in the group? Maybe so. And I would put my money on Darius Lassiter doing that because it's his final season and he's shown a lot of glimpses of just game-breaking potential. But even if he doesn't emerge like that, I think the sum total of the parts for BYU at wide receiver right now, it is going to more than make up for, not having the Austin Collie or the, as I mentioned, Cody Hoffman that you seem to have favored in the past as being the true alpha for BYU at wide receiver. This is a really, really talented wide receiving core. And Fesi Sitake, his biggest thing, I think, going into training camp is trying to dole out reps enough to get a feel for who truly is his top 3, who the next 3 are, and then what the future looks like with a Cody Hagen, a Dominique McKenzie, and or Tate Nakua, Jaron Kalama on down the list. It's kind of ridiculous to consider how much talent there is at wide receiver, but frankly, if BYU wants to be a force in the Big 12 as a football program, not saying just as an individual unit, BYU needs to recruit like Fesi Sitake is recruited to the BYU wide receiving core. You need to go 3 and 4 deep at certain positions on the football field if you truly want to be the elite of the Big 12 conference. That will obviously require time for all the position groups for BYU to accomplish that. I talked about yesterday on the podcast how I am very concerned for the future of BYU's defensive tackle position. I know that Jeff Hansen indicated that he believes Sione Puha is probably the least capable, or the power rankings of BYU's top recruiters. He's in last place, but the opportunity is there for a program like BYU to really emerge if they start to collect talent in bunches. And Fesi Sitake has kind of laid the groundwork, and I guess I'm trying to say he's kind of written the rules for how to go about this for BYU. Yes, you have to hit the transfer portal. Yes, you have to hit the high school recruiting ranks and love guys up and make them feel like they're part of something bigger in terms of picking BYU. But should BYU pull that off, they are going to be able to have a wide receiving group. And speaking of other position groups as well, if they follow the same path, to where BYU will be considered among the Big 12's elite. I've been listening to podcasts getting ready for the season that think BYU's in the bottom tier of the Big 12 this season. And I think it's for good reason. But I think that wide receiving core for BYU, they will not be the reason the BYU's in the bottom tier. I think it'll be other position groups that will fail BYU and will doom them to that basement if they truly do end up in the basement. But if this is a program that is set to exceed expectations, kind of sail on into the future and really show that they've made progress in the Big 12 conference, I think this wide receiving core could be a major part of that and could be a big talking point for all those talking heads out there when they look back on this BYU football season, looking at it saying, wow, those wide receivers really emerged and really showed that, yeah, the sum total of the parts was greater than the individuals in that room. And I hope it comes to fruition. I want BYU football to have a big season this year. And I think that wide receiving core, it absolutely has a critical role to play in any success or failure that BYU will endure this fall. All right, coming up here in just a moment, we'll wrap up today's show with a look at a thing that steps away from the football and athletic side of things for BYU, but at the same time, it also involves them as well. Some big news from BYU that comes out about the future of Brigham Young University in terms of what it's going to offer to its students. We'll dig into that next, right here on Locked On Cougars. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Ibotta. Now, all of us are spending a lot of money this time of the year. If you're going on vacation all summer long, are you taking that dream vacation and dreading the cost? Well, with Ibotta, you can get cash back on all of your purchases. So you can spend more time making memories this summer and less time dreaming about them because you don't have that cash in hand. Ibotta is a free app that helps you earn cash every time you shop. Earn on hundreds of items from groceries to beauty supplies, even toys. The best part is you can even take a beating to inflation with using Ibotta. The best part is the average Ibotta user earns over $256 per year, and you can use it at thousands, 2,400 brands, and over 1,000 retailers, including your favorite grocery stores like Lowe's, Macy's, Sephora, Best Buy, and more. It's all capable and available to you guys with the Ibotta app, which is free to download, by the way, on the Google Play or iTunes store as well. So right now, Ibotta is offering all of our listeners $5 just for trying Ibotta using the promo code LOCKEDONCollege when you register. Download on the App Store or Google Play Store and download that free app and start earning that cash back by using the promo code LOCKEDONCollege. Once again, $5 back. It's IBOTTA in the Google Play or App Store, and use that promo code LOCKEDONCollege to take advantage today. Today's show is also brought to you by our friends over at Factor Meals. Of course, all of us want to be more time efficient when it comes to eating our meals, but the best part is we don't want to sacrifice the quality and the taste of our food as well. That's where Factor Meals comes in. They have an incredible lineup of chef-made meals every week with Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, and keto options. Factor's fresh, no frozen meals are dietitian approved and ready to eat in just 2 minutes. So no matter how busy you are, you'll always have time to enjoy nutritious, great tasting meals. The best part is you can crush your wellness goals with dietitian approved meals and ingredients that you can trust. Make your day delicious from breakfast to dessert. Stay fueled with easy, nutritious options. The best part, once again, is you keep kitchen time to a minimum. Factor meals are ready in 2 minutes. No shopping, prepping, cooking, or cleaning up. That sounds like a win-win-win all the way around for me as a guy who's very busy this time of year. So head to factormeals.com/LockedOnCollege50 and use the promo code LockedOnCollege50 to get 50% off your first box and 20% off your next month with Factor Meals. That's code LockedOnCollege50 at factormeals.com/LockedOnCollege50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month while your subscription is still active. It's all courtesy of your friends over at Factor Meals. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day, first view of the day as well. For those of you watching this on YouTube, if you have not done so already, please sign up for our Locked On Cougars Insider Group. It's a great way to get inside intel on the BYU football program, basketball program, and everything else I've got for you guys in a text message. Think about that. It does not get much easier than not having to go comb through a message board or log into a website to get the inside intel that you crave. Sign up with Locked On Cougars, our insider group, using the link in the show notes, whether you're watching this on YouTube or listening to it. Get a 14-day free trial to see if it's the right option for you, and just $5 a month afterwards as my phone starts buzzing here on my desk in my studio. But sign up today and join us on our Locked On Cougars Insider Group. Please do so. We're having a lot of fun over there. All right, before we go on today's show, let's talk about a major major announcement from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. The First Presidency of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints has announced they intend to build a medical school at BYU. Folks, I cannot express to you how big of a deal this is to consider. There have been rumors of this for years that were debunked by multiple people about BYU won't ever build a medical school. Well, here's the deal. I knew a former staff member / deans of BYU's law school that I grew up down the street from, quite literally, who talked about how much of a miracle it was that BYU established a law school at Brigham Young University and how it has become an international powerhouse for legal minds. They brought in a lot of people to BYU law that a lot of people thought would never consider coming to BYU. I think a similar circumstance could play out here for BYU when it comes to this medical school. Now, this is an interesting conversation because the deal is that there already is a University of Utah medical school up there that's been around for over 100 years. I think it's 120 years now for the UU Medical School. But the thing about it is Taylor Randall from the University of Utah announced that they will work in concert with BYU and obviously the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and working as a partner alongside BYU. I also think that BYU and their medical school, according to the report from BYU, it's going to do something different than other medical schools. It is going to be focused on teaching with research in areas of strategic importance to the church. In time, it will draw students from within and outside the United States, the church said in their statement. Plans for the medical school are underway and specific target dates will be announced as they are set. Now, the interesting part about this is they are not going to create their own medical or hospital system with this medical school. This is a medical school that is going to focus on strategic research goals to help the aims of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, both stateside and more importantly, internationally. Remember, this is a global church. For those of you who may not be familiar with the LDS faith, it has got millions of members. More members of the church live outside the United States of America than live inside the United States. It is a global entity that absolutely has unique challenges, especially when it comes to the health, safety, and the overall well-being of its members worldwide. And it's not just limited, by the way, to members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. This is a medical school that is going to be a force for good on the international scene. They're going to bring in great minds to build this school from the ground up. And I'll say this. I think we have kind of learned maybe with this announcement, and it's not official because they didn't put it in the announcement, that I think that the medical campus, if you're going to build one, I think that Provo High campus is probably where it's going to go, because I just frankly don't see another spot on BYU's campus that you're going to be able to build an entire medical facility and medical school that has the adequate size, land, you know what I'm talking about, just the overall parameters it needs. The interesting part about this is, could this be a big part of potential realignment down the road for BYU when it comes to sports? There's a lot of people out there who believe that Utah has an inside edge of potentially joining the Big Ten at some point down the road because of what Utah has in its medical campus and its overall just prowess in the medical community. Could Brigham Young University's new medical school give BYU a leg up in potential realignment down the line? I'm not saying it's absolutely going to give them a leg up, but absolutely could play a role for BYU. I really think that this is a big move by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints to invest what will probably be in the billions of dollars in the end to build this thing from the ground up. And if it follows the same kind of trajectory that BYU's law school has had, you're going to see it become a force for good and, more importantly, just an internationally renowned institution in a relatively short time. It took a minute for BYU law to kind of gain traction, but with the pull of BYU, with the international reach of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints out there, there's no reason to think that BYU's new medical school cannot do what it aims to do. But if I'm Shane Reese, if I'm Tom Holmoe, I'm anybody in BYU athletic administration that has aspirations of being part of the next iteration of conference realignment, this could be a major factor for BYU to kind of lean on when it comes to the resume, looking like a better candidate when it comes to potential conference realignment. I'm not saying that BYU is going to try and jump to the Big Ten. In fact, I think BYU is very, very content and more than happy to remain members of the Big 12 Conference. But if things move, and there are some out there who believe that they're going to move very quickly in the not too distant future, and BYU is forced to kind of, I guess, gussy itself up and sell itself for what it's worth to these other conferences or whatever the new entities might be in college athletics, well, you could do a lot worse than having a medical school in your back pocket to add to that resume. BYU's done a really good job with law, with business in terms of its postgraduate studies. If BYU ever has aspirations of getting AAU status, it's an elite academic reputation / distinction that a lot of Big Ten and Pac-12 schools have carried for years. And it was something that they kind of thumbed their nose at. Speaking of the Pac-12 about BYU, it's not a research institution. Well, guess what? You had a medical school. BYU absolutely is a research institution. You can take that and shove it up your tailpipe for all I care. But I really look at this as a major, major boon for BYU and by extension, BYU athletics. It's a really cool thing. It's really cool to see the church stepping up and investing a lot of money in another facet, which will enhance the education of its students, both here in Utah, the United States of America, and more importantly, literally worldwide, because the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints has an establishment in 180 plus countries worldwide. I think they just recently announced earlier this week that the Republic of Azerbaijan has formally recognized the church as an entity in that country. The church is doing a lot of good things on the humanitarian front. And if you can add to that by helping train the next crop of medical doctors that can go out into the world and, as BYU's motto says, go out and be a force for good, hey, I'm all for it. And if it can also help benefit BYU athletics by maybe ending up as one of the haves versus being a have-not once again, if another round of conference realignment necessitates that, I am all on board, and I will be rooting on BYU Medical School, whatever they name it. Maybe it's the Russell M. Nelson Medical School, obviously to pay honor to our beloved prophet, Russell M. Nelson, who is a renowned worldwide renowned heart surgeon. So cool times to watch that unfolding at BYU, and we'll see where it ultimately ends up. But something to obviously pay attention to if you're a BYU fan in general, just sports, the university. It's a big deal to see that coming and that announcement being made yesterday. All right, that is going to do it for this edition of the podcast. As I mentioned, training camp begins formally for BYU tomorrow. First media observation tomorrow evening. I am scheduled to talk with Connor Pay tonight to get the player perspective on heading into training camp. So stay tuned for that on our Wednesday edition of the podcast. And as always, thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. Thank you to all of you who like to call everydayers right here on the Locked On Cougars podcast. And we will catch you guys again mañana.